What's up there, my friends? Welcome to Sunday with Carpo. It's Sunday here, anyway. Hope everybody's doing good today. I had a few things I wanted to talk about, mainly human beings and our just absolutely absurd existence in this reality, if you will. These are the kind of subjects that when people talk about, I tend to either my eyes gloss over or I get really involved. The epistemological, you know, or the root of why human beings do what we do. Such a simple concept, but very difficult to understand. Um, One of the hardest things about being a human is that we don't know our purpose. And I know that sounds absurd because a lot of people, in fact, a majority of people, are religious. And because of that, a lot of folks are shaking their heads saying, no, we do know our purpose. We're supposed to do this so we can go to heaven, or so we can re evolve or reincarnate. Now, I took my kids out to dinner last night at Sweet Tomatoes, the salad bar. Haven't been there in quite a while. And I went up to the soup counter and I was getting myself a bowl of soup and a baked potato. And this older, probably late 50s, long haired, kind of eccentric looking guy, and let me just tell you, I know the type, because they're the kind of guys who I will probably be when I'm older. But I will be a little more tactful in what I bring up in public conversations. But he turns to me and he says something. It's like the guy was just waiting to say something, and he started talking about, well, if we really reincarnate, then in our next lives, it doesn't even matter because you've already slept with your mother and all your cousins and everything else. And I was just like, looked at the guy and I was like, okay, yeah. Kind of humored him and I walked off without starting a conversation because I definitely didn't want to get involved with somebody who does too much thinking. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm the kind of guy who does a lot of thinking. I think a lot about where we come from, where we're going, whether or not we reincarnate, the heavens, all these things. And I've come to my own conclusions. Those conclusions I keep to myself because I have no interest in proving them to anyone else. It does not matter. I have absolutely no interest in convincing any one of you to believe what I believe. And I would have no reason to do so. But the fact that people do, and so many people are trying to convince me to believe what they believe, shows me that there's a true lack of understanding and grasp on the concepts of what it means to be a human. In other words, if we really understand what it means to be alive, we realize each reality is created individually. Each one of us has a totally different mindset on the world that has preconceived notions and is based on the experiences we've had. So to try to pretend like we know what's best because of what we learned in our Bible, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be offensive, but you read the Bible that was written by man. I don't care if you believe that it was divinely inspired or not. The point is, if you believe that, you should be free to believe whatever you choose. But the minute you try to convince other people, it shows that you have a lack of grasp on your own concepts. I've studied the Bible quite a bit and a lot of different religions. And when I've had discussions with people who claim to be religious, often they get angry at me, tell me I'm going to hell, merely because I can read their literature back to them and quote them that they're bullshitting themselves. Not that the Bible isn't true, and I really don't want to get into that. That's not where I'm going here, but it's not just the Bible. It's the concepts of life that we live by. The Bible for Western life is capitalism and wealth. The idea that we can all live in this big bubble where everybody's wealthy, and hey, well, if you just work hard enough, you can get a sports car. And it's completely absurd, the idea that we could all live as rich people. There aren't enough Bentleys in the world, you know. There's the question that it leads to, and where this video is really coming from, is whether or not we are a failed species. Is humanity a dead end? And I'm starting to think that well, I'm not starting to think, but I have thought for quite some time that humanity was an experiment of nature to become self-aware. And that self-awareness led to a confusion because humans weren't given enough instinct to override the amount of consciousness that they were accruing, if you will. In other words, we're developing so fast and learning so much information that we're not developing the tools within our minds to assimilate and reconcile this information and utilize it. When you look around at the world, at other animal species and other plants, when I was a kid, we were told that plants compete for sunlight, right? And this was only 25, 30 years ago when I was in high school. I was told that, trees compete, plants compete, animals compete. And as I got older and started to understand, and it wasn't just the school, it wasn't the school's fault. Science has come a long way since then. With more high-tech cameras and more remote access to remote locations, we are able to film the wild in its natural in its natural habitat and see how animals actually behave. And you start to find out, holy shit, these animals cooperate with one another. Not only do they cooperate within their own species, but they cooperate interspecially, working together. These symbiotic relationships, these connections, the birds and the hippos, the list goes on. And as humans, we don't know our purpose. So we thought our purpose is to do as much as we can and have as much as we can. Not everyone believes this, of course. There's a small group of people, the rich, the wealthy, the ones who are not, and not just the people who are rich. I want to make sure to clarify I'm not stereotyping wealthy people, because you can have a lot of money and do great things with it. But the wealth, the thing that people don't realize is that wealthy don't have to cooperate with anyone. And the poor people in this world are forced to cooperate with one another. And because of this, we interact and have our own values, our own morals, within our own communities, right? Doesn't mean there aren't poor people that steal, but there are plenty of moral people who are very, let's just say, less than wealthy. And when a person gets a little bit of wealth, they get a dopamine rush, because that, in their mind, is enough money to buy them what they need to eat. And that dopamine rush becomes an addiction. And what we find out is that rich people are dope addicts. And I don't mean that for every rich person. I mean that quite literally, the people who are constantly seeking more and more wealth at the cost of others' well-being are dope addicts. Because dope is rooted in the term dopamine, which is a natural compound that your brain produces, your body produces, to help you motivate. And the more motivation you have to make money, the more of a dopamine rush it is to get more money. And so therefore, they're just as bad as junkies in some ways, only junkies are harming themselves the most, whereas the extremely wealthy tend to ignore the poorer population and the people who need help the most. So here's where my video really comes to the point. I watched a show actually a while back about wealth and society and humanity, and this is constantly brought up in these shows. They said, well, if you put a rat in a cage and you give him a button to push, where he can get a release of dopamine, cocaine, whatever it might be, that the rat will keep pushing it until he dies. And these outdated, completely bullshit statistics have been published over and over and used in these shows for the past 40, 50, 60 years since these tests were done on these rats, which indeed they did push the cocaine, and they did continue taking cocaine until they died. But there's one thing that was left out of this. This test has been redone since then with several rats in the same cage. And guess what? They don't push the button. What you find out is that loneliness causes psychosis. It causes a chaos within the brain that will cause a rat or a mouse to actually seek pleasure until he dies, because he cannot get that from any other realm. If you were stuck in a cage with no one else and no interaction, then you'd probably seek that path too. And so when the test has been redone with other rats in what they called, I think it was Ratopia. It was this whole beautiful city that was made for rats, where they were comfortable, they didn't get harassed, they weren't stressed out and anxious, and they had company, that they wouldn't have the drug-seeking behavior. And so my conclusion on that is that humans who are seeking the addiction of drugs or of money are both suffering from loneliness and a disconnect from those that they need in their lives. I Could be wrong. But loneliness seems to lead to anxiety, and anxiety seems to lead to depression, and depression can lead to reward seeking behavior, if you will. And so, another aspect of this is that humans believe, and there's not all humans, but a lot, believe that there's this illusion that we should always feel good, that we should always be happy. And this is completely bullshit. You're going to have elated moments, you're going to have depressed moments. This is being human. It's not always about what we consume or what we don't consume. In fact, a lot of people take drugs to cover this up. Antidepressants, anxiolytics, and they just put you on this flattened level. Okay, everything's fine. It reminds me of the old meme with the dog in the house burning down, and he's reading his newspaper, and he says, "This is fine." That could be used in so many contexts. What's going on in the world or what's going on in our own brains. But antidepressants, I have a strong dislike of consuming just because we've had a hard time. There are legitimate cases of depression, and I've been through depressive episodes. I've been through panic attacks. I understand anxiety. And that's why I kind of say, people, you gotta, snap out of it, because most of our brain issues are caused by our own way of living, our decisions. And we find this out. Even people who have said, "Hey, I'm just depressed and I don't know why I'm depressed." It's like, well, are you living with somebody that you don't like? Are you interacting with people who treat you like shit? Do you have a job that makes you miserable? All of these things lead to our anxiety and depression. So we often do cause it by not getting away from the things that cause the problem. But I don't know. I think that one of the hardest things about being a human is that we base success and failure on our own minds and ego. Whatever an individual thinks is right and wrong, rather than looking at the whole of humanity. And that's why I brought up wealth earlier. A wealthy person can look at the rest of society and maybe think, well, they just haven't made it yet. But if you really believe that, you're completely deluded, because most people, if everyone lived at that level, we wouldn't have nearly enough resources to support it. I mean, who would work for other people, right? Who would be your basic, your butler, who would be your car washer? Somebody has to work these jobs. And so the longer people put down menial people because they have menial jobs and they're not making as much as they are, they're missing the whole point that without those jobs, these people wouldn't be able to be wealthy. They wouldn't be able to enjoy these things, because most of these people are so fucking lazy they couldn't do anything to help themselves. And like the Kardashians of the world. I mean, these are the scumbags of the world. I think that family is probably one of the biggest, douchiest families in the world. And as far as the whole Bruce Jenner thing, fuck that. I just don't buy into this crap bullshit. Like, we're supposed to feel a certain way about people. Oh, good for you. You're transgender. Proud of you. I don't give a fuck. I really don't. I'm not out here telling you about my body parts or what I do with my life. It doesn't fucking matter. And so, as individuals, we have to decide what matters. And somebody might be offended by me saying that. And if you are offended, then get over it. Because we have the right to say what we choose to say, how we feel, and how we feel about the world. And I see things through my filter, my reality. And I'm a kind person. I'm a compassionate person. I try to help people when I can. I'm a little bit self-absorbed sometimes because I have to be, and because if I care about every single thing in the world, I'm going to be completely torn apart because there's so much chaos out there. But like I said, the hardest thing is that we're worried too much about how others see us, and not enough about how we see ourselves. It seems that we're trying to overcompensate for our lack of self-esteem by getting others to believe that we're cool, that we're wealthy, that we wear nice clothes, whatever it might be. And so mankind, society, has taken competition too far. We've taken competition even out of the realms of income or profit or equality and into the realms of whether or not you believe that, Bruce Jenner is a hero. I brought that one up because a South Park popped into my mind. They did a whole episode on that, and it was foul, it was crude, it was offensive, and that's exactly why they needed to do it. Because the society we're living in right now is completely ass backwards. It's showing how this age of decadence is leading us into our own demise, to our own death. Basically, we're just burning alive and we haven't realized we're on fire yet. And in my personal life, I'm going to try to make it the best I can for myself and my family. I'm going to try to enjoy the moment while I'm here. Try to make it good for those around me. Make YouTube videos, share with you all as best I can. But I refuse to compromise how I truly feel and my own values in order to impress other people. So I guess that's where I'm coming from on this. And I think that knowing ourselves is probably one of the most crucial things that we can do right now. But as I said at the beginning, we don't know our purpose. We don't know why we're here. We've created a lot of stories about what we should be doing. But I think we all know deep down inside that we're completely full of shit. Right? Take care.